Hello there. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We'll give about 2 minutes for everyone to sort of start filing into the Zoom room, and then we'll start off from there. All right. So just bear with us a few minutes. All right. We'll give it 2 minutes, and then we'll start. Hey, I see Eileen.
Oh, she's coming in. Good. There she is.
Hi there, Eileen. How are you doing?
She has to unmute herself, I think. Hi, Eileen.
Okay, so we've got 1 more minute, and then we'll start.
Can you hear us, Eileen?
Hello,
Hi, Eileen.
Hi
How are
there,
you?
Eileen.
how are you?
All right.
Hey, Eileen, can I ask you a quick question? Your surname, is it a ch or a sh? Is it fashion or fat?
It's a chip.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
All right.
Thanks for that.
Perfect. All right, then. So let's start. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello there, everyone, and welcome to what is our final Innovating Insights webinar, at least final for now anyway. We're thrilled to have Lee Herbert from Imprevo and Eileen Fatchin from Blue Cross Ruckers Hill today, and they'll be sharing with us their secrets on increasing workforce capacity in age services. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm Merlin Kong, Head of Innovating here at Leading Age Services Australia, and I'll be your host today. Innovating is Australia's national innovation network for the age services industry, and we're open to all who are interested. We're open to all who have an interest in innovation in our sector, so welcome. We are a Commonwealth government-supported initiative, and we operate from LASA Centre for Workforce Development and Innovation. This is also a really good time for me to acknowledge our incredible network partners, our foundation partners, the Commonwealth Bank and KPMG Australia, and our gold partners, Plus Communities and Content Labs. Now, for today's session, we've not changed the format. We've kept it as is. Both Lee and Aileen will be speaking for 20 minutes, and we'll have a Q&A for the remainder of the time. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded, and you'll be on mute during this session. That said, we always have great Q&A discussions when you guys drive the questions, and to facilitate that, please use the chat function in Zoom. I promise to try to get through as many questions as I can, but if I can't get to your question and you really would like an answer, please email events@lasa.asn.au. Now, if you didn't catch that, not to worry. Alexis, who's working with me in delivering today's webinar, will be sending out a post-webinar email. It would have that email address, and it would also have a link to a recording of today's session. Now, look, I don't want to talk about, I don't want to dwell on too many preliminaries here, so we'll get on to the main action for today's webinar. So without much further ado, Lee, are you ready?
Sure. Let me just share the screen.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, then, over to you.
Thank you very much, Merlin. So everyone, thanks very much for joining us today. My name's Lee Herbert. I'm the Business Solutions Director at Imprevo. And we're here to talk about today how you can increase your workforce capacity, which we're saying is really closely linked to how do you eliminate the problem of underemployment. I'm just going to go through some slides. So just to give you some more information and some high-level information, we just want to talk about the digital workplace. This is a phrase that's been taking rise more prominently more recently. So we're now in an age where the workplace isn't just a physical space occupied by employees during office hours. Today's workplace is an always connecting environment, provided instant access to everything that our workers need. The lines between the physical office and the place where the work actually opens are becoming blurred, as in the difference between a personal and our working lives. As the workplace becomes more digital, the whole workforce and upper management can communicate and collaborate in many new and exciting ways. The digital workforce can combine productive business relationships between the natural work groups that enables more knowledge sharing right across the company. So I just wanted to shed some light on what actually is the digital workplace, and Deloitte has defined it as it consists of a holistic set of platforms, tools and environments for work delivered in a usable, coherent and a productive way. This definition gives focus on the experience of the employee as well as the environment in which they work. A good digital workplace can be tailored to what your organisation needs it to be. Now, why should aged care companies start to take more seriously the concept of the digital workplace? Well, to start with, it'll help you to find talent. So 64% of employees would choose a lower paying job if they could work away from the office. From an employee productivity point of view, companies with strong social networks are 7% more productive compared to without. From an employee satisfaction perspective, companies that use social media tools found a 20% increase in employee satisfaction. And to maintain our employees and prevent staff turnover, when engagement increases, there is a corresponding increase of employee engagement of up to 78%. And lastly, from a communication and a collaboration tools perspective, present day staff prefer newer communication and collaboration tools, specifically instant messaging, compared to traditional tools like email. Now, I just wanted to share with you some information, again from Deloitte, and it talks about how workers are going to basically adopt with smartphones, mobile phones and apps. So this research piece was done in 2018, but it talks about the number of tasks that can be done primarily on a mobile phone with the workforce. And it says that we estimate in the next 5 years, in the European Union anyway, 45% of the workforce, which is about 100 million workers, could be using a mobile device or a smartphone as the primarily or only work device in the next five years. And I think to shed weight with our product, we know that smartphones, mobile phones and apps, they don't frighten the aged care worker. They do take to them very well, and Aileen can talk a little bit about that in more detail in a moment. So this trend is very much here. So finding workers. We know from speaking to our clients that finding workers to fill vacant shifts is hard at the best of times, and is now made more challenging in the current situation with COVID-19 and the flu season that's coming in the months ahead. The government has stated its plans to implement strategies to maintain and retain the workforce and develop options for an aged care workforce capacity surge that could involve increasing the hours of visa workers, lifting the regulatory arrangements around general practice, and also employee graduates and students. Whilst all measures must be considered to ensure the sector's workforce has enough capacity, we believe the first step should be to solve the unaddressed and current underlying problem of underemployment within the existing workforce, as well as getting new workers into the sector. So I just wanted to go in a bit more detail into underemployment in the aged care sector, just have a bit of a deeper dive for a sec. So most aged care companies have between 70 to 80% permanent part-time or casual workers, and most do not get all the work they need. HESTA noted that there is 26% turnover of workers in aged care per year, and 30% of those workers are leaving companies because they don't get enough work. They're in effect, they are underemployed. It is this cohort that should be leveraged within aged care companies. Ensuring workers are getting the volume and types of shifts they want is particularly important for employees and retaining experienced staff to give the aged care sector an opportunity to meet the demands. Whilst the existing workforce is needing to triple in size by 2040 to meet the demand, addressing the problem of staff turnover is a critical priority that we don't believe is given enough focus. So what I'd like to do now, everyone, is just introduce you to Aileen Fashion, the residential manager at Blue Cross Ruckers Hill. Initially, Blue Cross was a Sapphire Care site, and it was one of the original founders that we worked with as a company in our beta testing phase. So Aileen will just describe what her problems were, the workforce, and how our platform helped solve those problems. Aileen, I think you're still on mute.
I'm off now.
Yes.
Thanks, Lee. So yeah, about 7 years ago, Sapphire Care had 24% staff turnover. You know, we'd had some problems, low staff engagement. We weren't utilising effectively all of our staff and had high agency costs. And then there was an ongoing inefficiencies from that. So, you know, trying to fill shifts, we couldn't share staff. We had 10 facilities, so we had a number of facilities we could share staff with, but we just didn't have the means to do it. And then Imprevo came along to us, and I must say it has been one of the best things that we've put in. It's really been really time efficient for us. It's given the staff ownership of what they do rather than us trying to manipulate staff into where we want them. They can take ownership of their own employment. So we were involved with Imprevo right from the beginning. We were able to provide feedback to Imprevo as we went along with the system. Our reception and myself, we would be spending many hours every week trying to chase staff to fill shifts for the next roster. Lots of phone calls. One stage I had everyone's phone messages, you know, phone numbers on my mobile number, trying to send out text messages. And of course, then that's an issue. You got 5 people answering that, and then you've got to try and then cut that back to one person that you need. But the most important thing was that we weren't utilising our staff effectively, and we weren't empowering them to be able to work when it suited their lifestyle. So we, you know, with the Imprevo system, we were able to do that. So we were able to give them ownership of their employment. They're able to work around their life, you know, whether it's study, whether it's home, and be able to do shifts that suits them by just linking into the system. So it's worked quite effectively. Lee, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, just that I think it was so important that it's a digital platform that's come from within the sector, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And worked really closely with, it wasn't only Sapphire Care back in 2014, 15, it was 4 other aged care companies. And we've found that obviously it was a problem that existed not just within Sapphire Care, but also at a lot of other companies, that when the roster changed, how do I then fill those vacant shifts? How do I engage with the workforce?
Yeah.
Because, you know, companies were working outside of the roster anyway. So this solves that problem, as you've stated.
Well, it took all the manual process out of it for us. Like the many hours our admin would have to work to try and fill shifts. Like that basically took those hours out and gave that time back. And just, you know, I think I really like about it that it does empower the staff to own their own roster. It's not, you know, it's not us sort of trying to chase people. They're working because they want to work. And then we've got people who work across the organisation. So it doesn't matter that they're employed at another site. They've got the same passion. They've got the same ideals about the way we work. They've got the same policies and procedures. So they can walk into our site and know exactly what the expectations are.
I think just going back to the previous slide as well, just to highlight a point, obviously there's a direct link to the more shifts you fill with your own internal staff,
Mm.
that has a direct linkage to what your agency or your overtime costs will be. But there's,
Absolutely.
but there's huge benefit in that because they also have the values of the company. An agency worker tends to not have the same values as your own workforce, and also you'll improve the quality and also the consistency of care.
Absolutely, and from also from the time point of view, you're not, when you have an agency in, you have to orientate them to the site,
Yeah.
orientate them to the processes. We don't have to do that because everybody is on board with the same processes.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Aileen. Appreciate your insights right from the very start. I must admit, Aileen's been great as well. If a company's wanted to talk to an aged care provider that's used the platform before, Aileen's there just to have a chat as well. So thank you very much, Aileen.
Thank you.
So just in summary, in short, focusing on the most efficient and also the most productive way to fill shifts. So that addresses aged care workforce underemployment. It improves the workforce staff turnover. It ensures the continuity of care for residents, and it saves significant costs for aged care companies, and that is crucial. Now we're just moving on to a concept, creating a surge workforce, and I think this terminology definitely became more popular and more prominent at the start of the COVID era, back going probably February now. So lots of companies, and myself, I was having lots of meetings with companies where this phrase would pop up, and it's generally came into being where companies were saying, oh, if we need a lot more workers to take care of our residents, how are we going to find these workers? So what we're saying is filling shifts with underemployed workers is really the first step. That's the more immediate problem, a more pressing problem that you can solve right now. So digital tools that understand the aged care context allow companies to better utilise their underemployed workforce, thus creating a capacity surge within their own company. In turn, they are better able to cope with the ever-changing shift demands, which is especially relevant in cases of lockdown or where staff are not able to attend work. This results in an enhanced ability to fill most of their vacant shift within their own workforce. In doing so, patients and residents are being looked after by familiar staff rather than agency staff. That picks up on that point before, that the continuity and quality of care is far better. So regular staff are also aware of their own organisation's policies and procedures, and equally, there is also dramatically decreases your agency and overtime costs in the process. So from Sapphire Care's perspective, and also over 650 sites right now around Australia, these benefits are real. From first-hand experience, by using the platform to identify and engaging with their underemployed workforce, companies report improved operational efficiencies with managers getting up to 20 hours a week of their time back. What was taking hours now takes minutes, and according to our client data that we tap into every single month, 25% of all available shifts are filled in just under 1 minute. 58% of shifts are filled in less than 5 minutes. And to ask frontline managers to revert back to using old methods before they start to use the Imprevo platform, that would be very harsh on them to do so. So we discovered by leveraging and engaging existing workers through a simple but powerful experience and giving them all the work they want, that was really the key. And obviously, in some cases, I know Sapphire Care did this, within 12 months, their agency and overtime costs have decreased by 90%. The other factor which I haven't spoken about in there is telco costs. There are hidden costs. You don't have to have telco costs. Every time you send a text message, there's a cost associated to that. So with using our platform, there's no use of text messages. Now that's critical. Now with 56% of aged care providers losing money, and with your workforce being your largest asset but your greatest cost, this is a critical problem to solve. So just in closing, and moving back to the theme of the digital workplace, so measuring business values through business drivers. So the digital workplace can empower your employees and direct their efforts by building communities of interest, driving knowledge management and collaborating in ways that make sense to the employees and that deliver measurable business value. To reap the benefits, the digital workforce should address the existing challenges and provide true business value. The businesses that will be successful in the future will be those who tear down the divide between people, technologies in the workplace. If there are no barriers dividing the workforce, everyone will be empowered to do their own jobs, to be creative and productive wherever they are. So thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks Merlin. Thanks Aileen.
Thanks for that, Aileen and Lee. That was a really good presentation. So let's maybe sort of move into the Q&A part of today's session. There's an ongoing question that normally gets asked in our webinars, and that is with regards to having an NH care provider working with a vendor. In both your opinions, what were the levers or keys to success between the Blue Cross and Prevo collaboration?
Well, just from our point of view, before perhaps Aileen answers, look, it was just important that the platform was built from a real problem, from a company that tried a multitude of current systems, whether it be, look, companies will need a roster, okay? You need the roster to pay people and also to schedule your permanent shifts. But the problem was that schedule changes daily. So there needed to be a solution to engage with the workforce really simply and quickly, and also combined with the fact that it was already been proven that workers were turning over at 26% a year, with the number one reason being they can't get enough work, they're underemployed. We knew that there had to be another solution, so we couldn't find one, so we actually built it. But it was built together with the needs of the workforce and also the employer. I think that's really the key, and that was done over a 4-year beta testing period of refine, test before a product was commercialised in September 2017.
Okay.
And I think also, like, you know, we were involved in all of that right from the word go. And, you know, we had test groups with some of our staff to see if it's something that would work for them as well. You know, they really understood our needs and what we were looking for, and also listened to the staff and what they would be looking for as well.
Okay.
I think, Merlin, just one last point on that. I think
Sure.
what was critical is because the average age of an aged care worker, I think, is around 50, from memory, whatever was commercialised needed to be really simple. So we spent a lot of time, and that's the most difficult part. It's not easy to make something simple. It's intuitive. That doesn't require any training, and workers can be in the app and start picking up work straight away.
Yeah, in many cases, taking that minimalist and Zen model is actually quite difficult, isn't it? Because it's easy to lump everything in there, but figuring out what tools they use, what they want, and to present that in a simple way is actually quite a challenge. So I guess we'll I'll sort of ask the elephant in the room. Why can't current systems solve this problem of underemployment at the moment?
Well, if you think about it, and I mentioned it before on an earlier part of the presentation, 70 to 80% of the workforce is part-time casual. Most of those shifts are not rostered shifts. Okay, they aren't permanent shifts. Okay, so, and therefore they won't be filled within the roster. So, and also if you combine the fact that there's so many changes that occur after the roster is set. So there needed to be some other solution. So if you think about it, the way of a current system, when you're using those systems, it is managers chasing the workers to fill the shifts. They're often sending, what we're saying is outdated communication in text or making phone calls to communicate with the workforce. That takes time. You can only go to one worker at a time invariably, and there is a cost associated with it, but you don't even know if a shift is being filled. So you really can't measure it. And the other thing with the text is workers don't know the difference between a personal text message or a text that's come from their work. So it ends up being spam to many, many workers. And we tested this closely. that there isn't enough text messages sent from the employer that the worker actually knows about fast enough, because they can't tell the difference. Is that a text message from a friend, or is that from work? I don't know. So there was also no simple way to see all shifts that the worker had picked up in that one place. You've got rostered shifts, you've got a lot of other shifts. So in the Imprevo app, the worker can see all of their shifts, okay, and they can browse ahead and they can hunt for work. So as soon as an employer knows if there's any vacancies, or even if there's any annual leave approved in advance, publish them on Imprevo. It's in everyone's best interest to get them filled as early as possible. So we aren't a roster or a workforce management system. We work alongside them and with them to solve a problem that those systems weren't solving.
Okay, thanks for that, Lee. A question has come up, and it's somewhat aligned to what you mentioned with staff sort of looking for the jobs. Does that create a bit of a internal economy? Do staff end up competing for shifts? How does that normally? How does that work?
Yeah, look, it can happen. They know the day that we're releasing the shift, so they'll be all on the ready, waiting with their phones at home, or when they're on break, they'll jump on their phones and be ready to dive into the shifts. So it can do, but we work at that. We release our shifts to our own site staff first, and then anything that doesn't get picked up by our own site staff, we then put out to the rest of the group. So, I think that was probably where the question was from the staff in the first part, was why are we putting it out to the group? We're not giving them first opportunity. And so that was a bit of a learning curve at the start, but it actually works quite well where we just put it out to our team first.
All right then.
Yeah.
Yep, were you about to say something, Lee?
Oh, look, I was just going to say, but the secret to all that working is the workers trust the platform. So 84% of the workers are jumping on the Imprevo app at least twice a day. So they're doing it at their morning tea break or their lunch break. And as I said before, they're browsing ahead of time. And as Aileen pointed out, a shift manager has the option of going to workers at their own site first, or they can go to all eligible staff across a company if you've got more than one site, or you can go to specific people, because we understand that there's going to be plenty of times where you need to zero in on a specific skill set or a specific person, but you've got the options to do so. Often if it's a shift that needs to be filled really soon, and of course you don't want to use agency, you might go to the all eligible staff, because the most important problem we're trying to solve there is make sure the shift gets filled with my own internal worker.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess the second question that's come up here is, with the system, do you see an increase in full-timers or part-timers as a result of using Imprevo? And what's the impact on things such as unplanned leave and workforce satisfaction?
Well, as far as leave and things like that, that's a roster function. So annual leave is measured in the roster. You can set the amount of hours that a worker can pick up on our platform. So if they're rostered on, for example, 30 hours a week, technically that means they can only pick up another 8 hours before they would kick into overtime. So you can set the limit to 8 hours that they can pick up on our platform to prevent overtime if you wish. So it's pretty flexible in those means and those functions to avoid the overtime. But mostly what it is, it's the part-time and casual workers that are on our platform. Invariably, it is not your full-time workers, because they're already rostered on. They've got their slots from Monday to Friday that they know. It's for the vacant shifts, really, that we're talking about here.
Okay. And how about if, I mean, we're sort of going into the underbelly of the conversation here, but with perhaps staff that management might know who are better performers than others, is there a way of managing that, where you could, if you had two people, one is perceived as being a better performer than another, how do we prioritize that, or is it just a flat playing field?
No, really, really good question. So there is the capability to create your own shortlist, and a company knows the qualities, the attributes, like, or the actual qualifications of their workers, so they can build what's called shortlists.
Hmm.
And if they need to, they can go to a shortlist, and only the people in that shortlist will get that push notification.
Okay.
So yes, you can do the Google approach if you like, where it goes out to everyone in seconds. It can go out to your entire workforce in seconds, or you can be more tailored.
Okay. All right then. Now, I know you mentioned that this is primarily for casuals and part-timers.
Yeah.
Has there been any instances where you've seen, or you or Eileen seen, where a part-timer has gone full-time as a result of using Improv just because demands in skill and knowledge and whatever have you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if we've got the availability on our roster,
Hmm.
we see the consistent approach of them picking it up. We're monitoring performance. Absolutely. So we'll transition people over to permanent, to full time if we can.
Okay.
Mm,
All
mm.
right then. And what's the cost structure? So how expensive is it to implement something like Imprevo within an
Yeah.
organization?
Okay. Well, look, we only charge a price when a shift is actually filled. So it's based on our clients having a win, which is a little bit different to other systems whereby it's every time you use it, regardless of if you know you fill a shift or not, there's going to be a cost.
Hmm.
Or a lot of systems just have a flat fee, so much cost for every user that's on the platform. So what we wanted to do to be different to that is um, we only wanted the platform um, to actually, I suppose, charge a price when our clients filled a shift. So that means what you can do, you can have all your staff on the platform, but if they're not picking up shifts, then you won't be charged for those staff. It also allows our clients to use a feature called news announcements or news messaging, which is all communication outside of filling a shift. You can message and send news out to all staff or staff at certain sites, staff by certain roles or even specific staff, and it's all free. It's add-on value. It's only when a shift is filled is there a price.
Okay.
And what that is, so that's $3.50 for every shift that's filled. Now, if you compare that to if I can't fill a shift, invariably I might go to agency, right? But we know that if you talk about a 7.5 hour shift, for example, the difference between that going to agency or being filled with your own internal worker is about $113. So if Imprevo is charging a $3.50, the net cost benefit's about $109.50 for every 7.5 hour shift.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. I guess something that's playing in the back of my mind here is that in addition to let's say being innovative with coming up with a platform like this, you're actually also innovating on your pricing model.
Yes.
Um, so that's really quite interesting. And why did Imprevo sort of venture down that path with regards to the pricing?
Yeah, well, when we first started, we used to have the pricing model of if you've got 200 staff or 100 staff, if they're going to come on the Imprevo platform, it'll be a flat rate for a certain cost for every worker. But not every worker picks up shifts. And then we found out that obviously with that, clients would then be paying for staff that aren't filling shifts. So that to us wasn't fair. So we needed to align the platform into the customer having a win. That is value. So if you're not filling shifts, it's free.
Okay. Now, quick question for you, Aileen. Yeah,
Yes.
cool. So with regards to deploying and implementing Imprevo at Blue Cross Ruckers Hill, for example, how did you get staff to start using the app? Or
It
what
was
did you do to
actually
get them?
it was actually quite easy, to be honest. They've all got mobile phones. They all want that. They want an easy system to be able to pick up shifts. Um, so it was actually quite easy. We had a lot of focus groups with our staff, and then we had a date where we changed over and said this is the only way we're going to work now from now on. So it's sort of anyone who wasn't on board with it then had to get on board with it. But they pretty much took it up so easy, and we had education with them. We really worked through with the staff on how it works, how easy it's going to be,
Mhm.
and really selling the point that they'd have ownership of their roster.
Mm.
rather
Okay.
than us trying to manipulate their roster.
Yep.
So that
Mm.
was the big thing.
Okay. And was there were there any setup costs that were
Not for
noticeable?
the
Or?
staff, no.
No, no.
Not
So
at
there's
all.
no cost for the worker to get access to the app. It's really easy. If you're if you're an Android user, you go to the Play Store. If you're an Apple user, you go to the App Store.
Mm-hmm.
The app's there. The worker, once they're on the platform, they can set the hours that they're free to pick up shifts, and they can even nominate the sites that they'd like to pick up shifts from.
Okay.
Now, obviously, the employer also has some power over that, because there could be some reasons why you don't want a worker to accept shifts at a certain site. But realistically, it's about solving this problem of underemployment,
Mm.
and it's really about work,
Okay.
and that's really, really critical.
Okay. All right then.
Yeah.
And in the instance of what would happen if a staff member didn't have a mobile phone or a smartphone?
Yeah, look, that has happened. I mean, just for example, if you've got 100 workers at your site, and 97 of them had or 90 had a mobile phone, what we've found, and Aileen might testify to this, because I think this happened at Sapphire Care in the early stages, that workers see their other colleagues picking up shifts on this app. They're browsing and they're accepting all these shifts. So if a worker didn't have a mobile phone, which is very rare, by the way, because Australia's got high 90% smartphone and mobile phone usage.
Mm.
But if it happens, we've heard stories like the workers have gone out and got themselves a phone.
Mm. Okay.
So there hasn't had to be pressure from the employer,
Mm.
but there's also the I suppose the capability of the employer having the email option, so the worker can be set up on email if they wish. But there is a big advantage in getting on the app. It's
Okay.
it's a better experience.
Yep. Now, Lee, you touched a little bit earlier on about the importance of trust. So workers trust the platform, and that's why they use it. Is there anything special that Imprevo does to instill that trust and to engender that trust?
Well, to be
Within the
honest,
platform?
yeah. Look, it's just a proven link to have the worker having, I suppose, the power to see shifts that are vacant shifts right now, tomorrow, next week, next month. I mean, I'll give you a perfect case study on that. For the month of June, across all of our clients, for the month of June, 40% of those shifts were actually filled in May.
Hmm.
Now, workers love having, I suppose, the power and knowledge to I suppose, lock in the hours and commitment. And we have heard before that in some instances, these workers unfortunately aren't well paid. So if they've got a little bit more control and empowerment over that, I think that's a great positive.
Hmm.
But it's just the
Yeah.
ability to browse and be I suppose, in control more.
I think too also that there hasn't been problems with the system, that they've got the confidence in it. If they're picking up a shift, they know that shift is going to be there when they show up at the facility.
Yeah.
So there hasn't been any technical glitches with the system. It's all ran quite smoothly.
Okay. Yeah, and that's really important, isn't it? And so, look, I guess another thing too. So we've talked briefly about startup costs. We've talked about operational costs, the pricing model. I guess the actual can you walk us through with regards to, let's say, an aged care provider wanting to take up Imprevo, how do they get started?
Yeah. No, I'll give you I'll walk you through that. We've just rolled out Bupa. Just finished. So 72 sites, over 7,500 staff are on the platform. We need one product champion from the client side, and we've got one product lead. Those two, so it doesn't need an IT project. This is all cloud-based. It's simple. So all we need is a CSV file from any client that has about 6 fields of information: worker first name, second name, mobile, email address, their primary role, their other roles, etc. We upload that, we set the company up on the platform. We obviously talk with the product champion in the company about their setup options. So from the start of getting that CSV file from when a company goes live, it's about four weeks. So Bupa 72 sites was active in about 7 or 8 weeks. And to be honest, companies can't believe that, how simple that is, because they're used to at least 12-month setups with a lot of training. A lot of systems are fairly cumbersome and clunky. Ours is pretty simple. So very little training, but we do have a product lead that spends a little bit of time, does some demos, but the product champion at that site is the go-to person for any quick queries or questions.
Okay, all right then. So so we're sort of at the 40-minute mark, so I'll start winding us down, or start winding the session
Right.
down. But first to you, Lee, and then to Aileen. You know, the topic of workforce is hot at the moment. I think
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of conversation and discourse with regards to workforce in the sector, and the future of workforce in the sector, and also the future of work itself, the nature of that changing. Lee, first with you, what do you see? What do you think is really exciting at the moment with regards to workforce in age services?
Well, I think, look, to be honest, look, we know that the demand will be there. I think there's no doubt about that. And whilst yes, there is a shortage of workers, I think potentially more so in the regional areas. But I think with a lot of platforms coming into the sector, we are one. There's lots of ways for workers to be able to have more control and empowerment over their work-life balance. So I think there's digital platforms, and the digital age, I think, will make it easier for the employer and the employee to be connected. And that's a major leap forward to how it's been in the past. We're seeing it solve some of these problems with underemployment and the time it takes to fill shifts and low workforce engagement to decrease costs. So I think that's a win for everyone. Because hey, let's face it, the demand is going to be strong going up to the next 20 or 30 years. So I think that's promising. It's really about, if someone wants to work in aged care, realistic, it's about I think providing them tools that makes it simple to find that work.
Okay, thanks for that. And Aileen?
Hi.
Hi. What's exciting for you with regards to workforce?
I think it's being able to get the absolute most out of our team, and having people that want to be here for the right reasons, and for them to be able to give as much as they want. So I think, like Lee was saying, the jobs are there, but we probably weren't utilising our staff effectively. And I think this, being able to utilise our staff effectively,
Okay.
and just time benefits, and so it is quite exciting that our team are able to feel a sense of ownership over their own employment.
Okay then, and look, I think that's a fabulous way to end today's session. What I get with what you just said there, Aileen, is that through Imprevo, Blue Cross is able to allow their staff to be all that they can be and all that they want to be, and I think that's
Absolutely.
a really empowering. That's a really empowering note to finish on. So Lee, Aileen, thank you so much for making time to join us for today's webinar, and also sharing your insights and your experience with us. I think this is really incredible. So thank you very much. All right.
Pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mel.
Sure. And that brings us to today's session to a close. Look, I think someone's posted a message here to ask me to close the whole series itself, and I think I'll briefly do that. So over the last 6 weeks, thank you to all of you for joining us and logging in and watching the recordings. I think we've had over 2,000 subscribers during this period, and that's really incredible. We've framed this series within the context of the current landscape that we're operating in, and it's been a challenging time. And over the 6 weeks, we've talked about the importance of aligning technology with our strategy. We've looked at how we can utilize robots to free up care workers so they can do the business of caring. We looked looked at how digital platforms can be utilized so that aged care providers can take control of their aged care quality standards, responsibilities. Today, we've looked at how we can ramp up workforce capacity with digital tools. We've looked at technology and how technology can help create lively and active communities. And we've also looked at this whole piece on normalizing service delivery and innovation lessons learned through the bushfires earlier on this year and now a global pandemic. In the case of in the case of the presenter that we had with this, how they maintain a situation where they can continue focusing on people first, having zero outbreaks and having zero layoffs. So on behalf of Innovaging, Laser, and our partners, thank you very much for supporting this webinar series. I will borrow again from what I said last week in that Innovaging isn't innovating without you. We'll look to ramping up another webinar series a little bit further down the road this year. In the meantime, thank you for your support, and we'll see you around. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Merlin. Bye.
Yep. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.